I'm Chris Hansen, right now on Crime Watch Daily from here in New York. She's the spoiled Chicago teen whose crime shocked the world. Heather Mack, convicted in the murder of her wealthy socialite mom, beaten and stuffed into a suitcase in Bali. She claimed her money-hungry boyfriend did it. Now, in a stunning turn, Heather Mack says she's the killer.
He's innocent. I'm not.
Her outrageous new claim about why she wanted her mother gone.
It's such an appalling, vicious lie.
And why her new story doesn't add up.
Do you think there's a plan, that this is all part of some plot?
Then a woman held hostage for 12 days. Tierne Ewing lives through hell on earth.
He had hit her in the head with a gun, had split her skull open.
Kidnapped, tortured, battered, and bruised. But this was no random attack.
She's in the bank and she says that her husband is holding her captive.
How young love that began in grade school turned into a fatal attraction.
We tried so hard to get them apart.
Our special correspondent, Kim Goldman, with the shocking ending that will leave you wondering, how did this happen?
She said, if he's out, I'm gonna die.
Right now.
Andrea Isom, sir, with Crime Watch Daily.
Jason Matera with Crime Watch Daily.
This.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm here with Crime Watch.
I'm Michelle from Crime Watch Daily.
Anna Garcia from Crime Watch.
Is Crime Watch Daily.
Stay off my property. We'll find you again. We always do.
Welcome to Crime Watch Daily, everyone. I'm Chris Hansen. We start today with a wild new twist in the highly publicized case of Heather Mack. In a Crime Watch Daily exclusive, Heather made all kinds of accusations from behind bars about her mother. And now she's talking again. And this so-called confession is the biggest one of them all. Here's Narissa Knight.
Oh my God. It was one of the most sensational crimes we've ever covered.
She just went nuts. And she was just screaming and screaming and telling me that was when I was going to die. That was when I was going to die.
In our exclusive jailhouse interview with teen killer Heather Mack, she told us how her boyfriend, Tommy Schaefer, bludgeoned her mom to death in a Balinese hotel room before they both stuffed her body in a suitcase and dumped it in a taxi.
They thought he was gonna run!
But now, in a stunning new update...
So, this is a video that I need to make.
Heather Mack is back with an all-new confession that she says changes everything we thought we knew about the crime.
He's innocent. I'm not.
Half a world away and a virtual lifetime ago, Heather Mack was just a sweet little girl full of promise, the pride and joy of famed jazz composer James Mack and his wife, academic socialite Sheila Von Weiss Mack.
She grew up in a very nice house, and she had, from all accounts, a privileged upbringing.
But sadly, while Heather was just 10 years old, her dad died of a pulmonary embolism while on a family vacation in Greece. And in the years after that, the relationship between Heather and her mom became more than a little strained.
Well, she told me that she was being abused by Heather. I mean, she was constantly being attacked physically, and Heather had an explosive temper.
In fact, over a 10-year period, police were called here on reports of domestic violence more than 80 times.
Heather pushed her one time in the bathroom and she fell and broke her arm.
And yet Sheila still tried to keep her daughter close, booking a trip for both of them to the island paradise of Bali.
This vacation was supposed to be a reset, to bond between mother and her daughter and try to rebuild this relationship from the ground up.
But then, as Heather would later tell us in a phone interview from behind bars, her boyfriend, Tommy Schaefer, suddenly arrived on a $12,000 flight from Chicago, one that she paid for with her mom's credit card.
I snuck off to the beach with him and she woke up, and that's when she went to the first reception, and they said Tommy Schaefer checked in under your credit card, and she just went nuts.
Not long after that, a flurry of texts between Heather and Tommy. Tommy writes, "Can you whack her in the head with a big expletive pole?" Mack responds, "Can you?" Tommy, "Yes, come in the hallway right now. Too dangerous not to do it. Gee, you have to come in. Tommy, here I come."
At one point, Tommy brings a fruit bowl, a glass fruit bowl with a metal handle, to the room.
The very one used to beat the life out of Sheila. It's believed that once he came into the suite, Tommy hid in the bathroom while Heather waited for the right moment, still texting as she did. Plan? Heather asks. Tommy responds, "Let me just creep up and whack her. Once I do it, she was drunk and slipped and fell." Heather, "Okay, just knock her out. It will be much easier."
I just can't wrap my head around the way she died and what they did to her poor, sad, pathetic, dead body, and stuffing it into a suitcase.
But Heather told us that the murder was not premeditated and only happened after Tommy showed up and they told Sheila Heather was pregnant.
She was so angry. I told her I was pregnant, and she went around the room looking for a knife, and she was just screaming and screaming and telling me that was when I was going to die, that was when I was going to die. And I said, "Tommy, help me." And Tommy walked over to her, and she went and she grabbed Tommy's neck, and he just smacked her. Smacked her over and over and over and over and over. And I ran to the bathroom. I said, "Tommy, what are we going to do? Tommy, what are we going to do? Tommy, what are we going to do?"
What she does is fold her mother up like an accordion and put her into a suitcase. Unbelievable, with blood everywhere.
Our interview got cut short before Heather could explain the text exchange leading up to the supposed spur-of-the-moment crime. But that was then. Now,
A lot of the times, since I've been a kid, I've heard, "The truth sets you free, the truth sets you free."
in a 3-part video posted to YouTube just days ago, Heather says not to listen to anything she said before.
I'm Heather Mack, and I want to be set free. I don't want to live in a lie anymore.
Though before Heather said the killing was more or less in self-defense, the evidence suggested she did it for the inheritance money. But now Heather says the true motive was darker than anyone realized.
When I was 10, my mother killed my father in a hotel in Athens, Greece.
You heard right. Heather says her dad didn't die from pulmonary embolism after all, but by her own mother's hand.
2 weeks before I came to Bali, I found out that she killed my father. And I made it up in my heart, in my mind, my soul, in my blood, in the oxygen running through my body, that I wanted to kill my mother.
Problem is, saying she only came up with the idea 2 weeks before Bali contradicts these texts sent from Tommy to a Chicago cousin a full 6 months before the murder. But then, when it comes to Tommy, those texts, and so much more, Heather Mack still has a lot to say. Coming up,
I began taking Tommy's phone and having conversations between Tommy and myself.
more shocking revelations from Heather Mack's latest confession.
She's kind of a student of alternative facts.
And what her victims' loved ones have to say about it.
I mean, it's like a 3-ring circus.
How low can a person go? That's what some people are asking after convicted killer Heather Mack released inflammatory new videos talking about her mother. Remember, this is the same woman who Heather murdered and stuffed in a suitcase while on vacation in Bali. Here's Narissa Knight.
In our first exclusive interview with the girl convicted of conspiring to kill her own mother with her boyfriend Tommy, Heather Mack had this to say.
I miss my mother. Yeah, I miss my mother.
But now, in a video posted to YouTube just over a week ago, Heather is changing her tune.
I don't regret killing my mother. And as evil as that may sound, that's my reality.
Heather now claims her mom's murder was a revenge killing after Sheila allegedly killed Heather's dad 10 years before.
I got this whole new savage idea in my head that I wanted to kill her in a hotel room because she had killed my father in a hotel room.
Which is exactly what she did with the help of her boyfriend, Tommy Schaefer. At least that's what the record shows. But Heather has something new to say about that as well.
Tommy's an innocent man. This is the truth. And whoever is watching this, don't hate Tommy. He's innocent. I told Tommy that he was going to come here for a vacation. Came to Bali, my mom found out. I killed her myself. And then I told Tommy that if he did not help me clean the room and get rid of the body, that I would tell the police that he did it. I would pay money to get him arrested. So he helped me clean it. He ran with me.
But if Heather really did it all by herself, then what about all those texts between her and Tommy in the days, hours, and even minutes leading up to Sheila's murder?
I began turning off Tommy's phone, taking Tommy's phone when he was asleep, starting in Chicago, taking Tommy's phone and having conversations between Tommy and myself, texting myself, having fake conversations, and then deleting them before he could see them.
But Tommy did confess to the murder in court, which Heather says was also her fault.
We told Tommy together, my lawyers and I, that if he didn't take the blame in the court, that he would get the death penalty. So he lied in the court because of me. My motivation for doing this was myself.
Ultimately, Tommy was given 18 years for the crime, while Heather received a 10-year sentence.
I'm sorry, Tommy Schaefer. I'm sorry. I love you. I really love you, and if I could go back, I would do it myself. And I'm sorry that everyone who ever knew you now thinks you're a murderer when you're not. I'm sorry you won't be able to get a job. I'm sorry everybody thinks that you're some crazy killer. I love you, Tommy.
And that's where the video ends. But there seem to be several contradictions in Heather's latest claims, including when it comes to the man she now says is completely innocent. In a 4,000-word letter released to the media a few months ago, Tommy calls Heather a manipulative sociopath and once again takes responsibility for his actions, writing, "For anyone that I've ever come in contact with, please forgive me. I am forever appalled with myself." So what do the people who knew Sheila best have to say about it all? Sheila von Mack's good friend Elliot Jacobson says that when it comes to Heather's latest claims, two words come to mind.
Fake news. I watched it several times in complete disbelief. You know, she's kind of a person who's a student of alternative facts.
And Heather's Aunt Debbie, Sheila's sister, has even more to say, especially when it comes to Heather's new claims about why she killed her own mom.
When I was 10, my mother killed my father in a hotel in Athens, Greece.
What do you say to that?
I mean, it's such an appalling, vicious lie. My sister loved her husband, Jim. And she would never have done anything to hurt him. That's just a vicious, cruel, mean, cold-blooded lie.
But what about the new claims that Heather, and Heather alone, killed her mom, that Tommy was just a pawn?
But why would she lie now about this when she got a lesser sentence than Tommy?
I don't know. I really don't understand at all. It makes no sense whatsoever.
My own view is that she's unhinged. I think she's off center. Heather likes the attention. She might have done this videotape in order to get back in the spotlight and get some more media attention.
But could there be an even more outrageous explanation? In yet another stunning turn, just days after this new video was posted, attorneys for Heather recanted the whole thing, saying every bit of the so-called confession, from taking responsibility for the murder to threatening Tommy with the death penalty, was coerced. In fact, they say it was written by none other than Tommy Schaefer himself, who forced Heather to read it on camera.
What about her attorney now saying that what she's saying is a coercion of Tommy and she's forced to say this? Do you believe that?
No, I mean, it's like a three-ring circus, and I don't know why, but I guess I don't know if they're getting bored in prison and they have to decide to do something else, but I don't understand it at all.
In fact, there are only a few things the people who love Sheila say they do understand, what they know to be true.
I mean, the family lost a sister and a niece, essentially. And this woman is just lost. You know, she's lost. And I think she's just a mistake of nature.
Do you think there's a plan? That this is all part of some plot?
If it is, I really have no idea what it is. I mean, the plan was to kill her mother, and they succeeded. Sheila was beaten to death, brutally beaten to death, and stuffed into a suitcase. That's the only sure thing we know.
Up next, a woman living in fear of her husband.
He definitely had a temper that could switch quite quickly.
The brutal attack, her daring escape caught on camera. But this story is far from over.
She was so afraid for her family. She had to stay near him to protect them.
That's next. For 12 days, Tierne Ewing lived hell on earth, kidnapped and tortured, even branded with a scorching hot metal rod. But this is no random attack. Special correspondent Kim Goldman is in Pennsylvania now with our all-new investigation. And we want to warn you, some of the things you're about to see and hear are very graphic. Kidnapped, beaten, and tortured.
He had hit her in the head with a gun and had split her skull open.
Tierne Ewing is desperate to escape a sadistic captor. It's her husband of 30 years.
She's in the bank and she says that her husband is holding her captive.
How did a young love that began in grade school blossom into a fatal attraction?
We tried so hard to get them apart.
And how did the system sworn to protect Tierne ultimately betray her?
It's tragic. It's tragic.
With so many horrific stories of domestic abuse, it might be easy to overlook the struggles of Tierne Ewing, a 48-year-old mother of two from rural Washington County, Pennsylvania. That is until you meet her family, as our special correspondent Kim Goldman did, whose brother Ron was also caught in the crossfire of domestic violence.
Even when he was involved, we had good times. But looking back now, it was all just a show. It wasn't him. It was two different people.
Did you guys see that side of him? Or those sides of him?
He definitely had a temper that could switch quite quickly.
Tierne and Kevin Ewing began dating in the 8th grade, a turning point in her life, according to those closest to her.
We tried so hard to get them apart, and she'd date maybe somebody else or what have you, but he wasn't going to hear to that. She was his.
She just became distant, and
she wasn't allowed to do much with her friends. I mean, and she had a lot of friends.
She just started pulling away from the family, and he had control over her then.
Tierne was married at just 18, and soon the teen bride found herself raising two young children. At first, all seemed well between her and Kevin.
When we'd go to their home, he was nice as pie, you know. What can I do for you?
But Kevin Ewing had a reputation as a violent man, with a rap sheet to back it up. And he would soon turn that rage against the mother of his children. After this incident in 2001, which left Tierne battered and bruised, she received a court-ordered PFA, protection from abuser.
She had been hospitalized or required medical treatment from those injuries.
But as hard as it is to believe, Tierne would soon get back together with Kevin.
It was like a bad penny. It just kept coming back.
According to District Attorney Kristen Klingerman, who specializes in victims of domestic abuse, there's a good reason for that.
Tierne expressed to me over and over that she was so afraid for her family, for her adult children, and for her elderly parents who are very frail, and that she had to stay near him to protect them. He would always said that he would kill them in front of her if she didn't do his bidding.
And there were several times that that threat was made. Several.
It would fire my dad up so bad that we had to stop him many times from leaving to go look for him. Or
Ewing faced more charges of assault and abuse, but rarely served jail time.
He fell through the cracks of everything. No matter what he got into, he got out of it.
Trapped in this vicious cycle of violence, Tierne did her best to put on a brave face.
Did she tell you ever anything that was going on between them? Did she share fears or?
no, she would play things off. She would be, if she was here, you know, she could only stay for 15 minutes. She had to go home because she had to do something, or we knew it was because of Kevin.
She had to account for her time. A trip to the grocery store should take X amount of minutes, and if not, then he would call and want to know where she was and why she wasn't home yet.
Looks like he had his thumb on her.
And she said many times, Mom, I was awakened by the bed shaking. He was standing on top of the bed, straddling me. And she said, and I'd hear a click. And she said it was right here. It's hard to believe that people actually are this way. And to know that it's your own child.
Finally, in July 2016, Tierne reached her breaking point. She and Ewing had again separated, Kevin living with his mother, while Tierne remained in the family home with her adult son, Derek. Then a terrifying turning point. For 12 straight days, Tierne called in sick to work and made virtually no contact with her family. What no one knew is that she had been abducted by Ewing, held captive against her will, being hideously terrorized and tortured.
At night, he would tie a cord around her neck and then tie it to himself so that she couldn't escape when he slept. And multiple times throughout this, he would hold a gun to her head, tell her she's going to die, tell her her parents were going to die. He would kill her parents in front of her and then kill her.
Throughout the ordeal, Kevin never let Tierne out of his sight.
He went everywhere with her, to the bathroom, everywhere.
He took her to a very desolate area, to a location near water. She was terrified of water. She couldn't swim, and during that time, he had a metal rod that he put in a fire that they cooked hot dogs on, and he had burned her legs, several places up and down her legs. He had stomped on her foot. She could only wear flip-flops. He had stomped on her foot so she couldn't run.
Then finally, on day 12 of her torturous captivity, Tierne spies a chance to escape, but it could cost her her life. Up next, Tierne's desperate plea for help.
Okay. He possibly has a gun. She's afraid to go back out there with him.
And wait until you hear the court's shocking response to Kevin's crimes.
It was very devastating.
It's sadly a common theme we see here at Crime Watch Daily. Small cracks of domestic violence creep into a relationship, and as time goes by, those cracks get bigger and bigger until one day they take a tragic turn. Our Kim Goldman is in Pennsylvania investigating a case just like that. And we want to warn you, some of the details of this story are very graphic. For 12 terrifying days, Tierne Ewing has been held hostage by her estranged and sadistic husband, Kevin Ewing. A man who authorities say has kept Tierne under his thumb since the 8th grade.
Kevin was very controlling of her. He was controlling of her phone calls, of who she saw, where she went, what she did. And that was the norm for them from the time that she was very young.
He forced her to call her work and tell them that she was sick and to call off of work.
She was the most courageous woman to be able to take that on a daily basis.
But on July 8, 2016, Kevin made a mistake. That afternoon, he drove Tierne at gunpoint to a local credit union to pay their mortgage.
I don't know what got into him, that he felt comfortable maybe, that he let her go in alone. And it was the first time she had been able to go alone. And once she was in there, immediately told them to call police, that she had been held hostage.
Washington 911, where's your emergency? Crown Federal Credit Union. We have a woman that's in here, and she says that she's in the bank, and she says that her husband is holding her captive. And he possibly has a gun. He's in the parking lot.
Okay, what kind of vehicle is he in? Did she tell you?
Vehicle. Truck.
Okay. A black truck.
She was very panicked. She wanted to be locked up.
Employees wisely lock Tierney in another room. Police arrive and take Kevin into custody.
And even once the police got there and had apprehended him and arrested him, she was too afraid to go out the front door. She insisted that the police take her out the back door where he couldn't see her.
It was here, outside this credit union, where Kevin was arrested. And Tierney thought her nightmare was finally over.
But the terror continues. Despite a court order that restricted him from having any weapons, Ewing was armed to the teeth.
He had 2 loaded guns, a handgun and a rifle, and he also had a knife.
Tierney is taken to a local hospital, and it's here that police learn the full extent of the abuse she has endured. And we want to warn you, her injuries are disturbing, the images graphic. She'd been pistol whipped across the head, her knees bashed with a hammer, her legs branded with a hot skewer, and spit on in the face. Even for veteran District Attorney Kristen Klingerman, it's some of the worst abuse she's ever seen.
He had also beaten her. He had slammed her about the room. She had bruises on her shoulders, her back, her legs. He had duct taped her mouth shut and with zip ties and duct tape tied her in a closet for an extended period of time. At night, he would tie a cord around her neck and then tie it to himself so that she couldn't escape when he slept.
When police search the Ewing's home, they find disturbing evidence of her torture and captivity. Used zip ties, duct tape, blood. But with their adult son Derek living in the home and Kevin and Tierney often leaving the house, how did no one ever notice? Our special correspondent Kim Goldman went looking for answers.
And no one saw any bruises. Maybe we don't pay attention.
Tierney explained to me she kept long sleeves on and did not point out the bruises.
How did those kids not know? 12 days? There's a lot of unsaid questions.
In fact, Tierney's own parents learned of her kidnapping in the local paper.
It was unbelievable what we learned from the paper. It was front page for I can't tell you how long.
Wait, that's how you found out that she was
held captive.
Oh my God.
Her father, Rich, was even more devastated when he saw what happened with his own eyes.
I went up to the DA's office and was talking to Kristen, and I come around there, and there was my daughter standing there. It's so hard.
In addition to charges of kidnapping, assaulting, and terrorizing his wife, Kevin's also violated his PFA, or Protection from Abuser order. But to everyone's dismay, the judge allows Kevin to post bond until trial, which means he's free.
And the next thing we knew, he was walking around the streets. And the judge didn't think it was very harmful.
Fearing for her life, Tierney turns to DA Kristen Klingerman.
And they said, Kristen, can we come see you? There's someone that needs to talk to you. They brought her over. She said, he's out of jail and you've got to get him back in. If he's out, I'm going to die, and I don't want to die.
Kevin Ewing, seen here in local news footage, returns to court, this time to face the discretion of Judge Gary Gilman, who in this campaign video vowed to keep his community safe.
I love Washington County. I lived here for 31 years, went to WJ College. I want to make Washington County a better place to live.
I put forth the charges with which he was charged, that he had kidnapped her, he had assaulted her. I attached photographs of all the injuries that had been taken, of her wounds and her injuries. I explained the charges that he was being charged with. And one of those charges was important because Being that he had been convicted of domestic violence prior, he was not permitted under Pennsylvania law to be in possession of firearms, yet he was found with 2 firearms. I also explained that he had had the prior domestic violence and had requested that bond be raised to a more appropriate sum.
But to the shock of the community and the horror of her family, Judge Gilman rules against Tierne. Kevin is cut loose.
She would have finally been able to try to put her life back together.
She'd have never been free from him, whether he wasn't here or not.
They beat you up, they burn you, they choke you, they do whatever, and then, honey, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I swear I won't. I swear it's the last time. That's
He's ordered to wear an ankle monitoring bracelet and strictly forbidden from contacting Tierne. But will it be enough to keep the battered wife safe?
She was certainly in fear for her life.
I have to say this about her. Throughout all the proceedings, and even when she came to me and explained the horrible abuse she had undergone, she had a certain grace about her. She was soft-spoken. She did not blame people. She always had grace and a certain class about her.
Did she harbor any anger towards the judge?
No, she never expressed any anger towards anyone. At times, tears would well up in her eyes and she would become very sad, but she never expressed anger towards anyone.
According to State Trooper Sarah Teagarden, for several weeks it seemed that Kevin was abiding by the judge's order.
He hadn't violated any of the conditions of that bond, and I think he did that intentionally. I really think that he thought, if I just play the good guy, if I show her that I'm willing to change, I'm willing to abide by all of these conditions and move on with my life and do the right thing, I think he did all of those to try to draw her back in and sucker her back in and get access to her again.
Sadly, if that was his plan, it worked to tragic perfection. Coming up, Tierne disappears again.
And she said he has her, and I knew then she wouldn't be coming home.
Tierne Ewing's father says his daughter was scared to death of her husband, Kevin, and rightfully so. Police say Kevin kidnapped Tierne and tortured her for nearly 2 weeks. She managed to escape. Kevin was arrested. Finally, Tierne was safe. But then, the unthinkable. In July of 2016, the fuse is lit on a human ticking time bomb. Kevin Ewing is allowed to post bond for his crimes, despite the horrible violence he's repeatedly inflicted on his wife, Tierne.
His family was able to obtain a bail bondsman that allowed them to free him from jail on 5% of that. So the family put up $5,000 to get him out of jail.
In an irony particular to cases of domestic abuse, Ewing is allowed to live relatively free until trial. His wife, on the other hand, is living in fear, seeking safety in a women's shelter.
The victims are being treated like the criminals. They put them in safe houses. And you know what? They find them every time.
Despite a court order forbidding him from contacting Tierne and an ankle bracelet to monitor his every movement, the fatal attraction of Kevin and Tierne drew them back together yet again. Tierne's sister tells our special correspondent Kim Goldman she believes it was an act of selfless courage.
So what struck me is that your sister ended up in the house with Kevin and his mom. Do you know why she ended up there?
I believe she was there to protect her family. I honestly believe that. I'm not saying that in some sick, twisted way of being manipulated for years that maybe she didn't have some sort of love, whether it be a twisted love or the only love you knew. I think the top priority was to keep everyone safe. And she didn't want anybody else drug into this with her.
Do we have any inclination as to why she may have gone?
The only thing I can tell you is that she was convinced that she had to stay near him to protect her family members.
Tierne was a tough girl. She was not going to go out there and look for help. She felt like she could handle it and that she could make it right and keep her family together.
Her father, Rich, has another theory. Kevin's attorneys warned their client that he was in serious trouble for his latest assault on Tierne.
Said to him, "You're looking at 20 years to life." And he always told me, "I ain't never going back to jail."
At midnight on August 30th, Kevin Ewing began the final chapter in this ill-fated romance.
The Pennsylvania State Police received a call from Rosalie Riggle, which is Kevin Ewing's mother, and she advised that Kevin had been in the house with a gun holding them hostage in the basement of the house. He had cut off his ankle monitor and took Tierne and put her in the car, and they left the house.
I received the call at about 5:30 a.m. that he had taken her, and that's when I knew there wasn't going to be a happy ending.
I got a phone call at work at about 5 after 6, and was told that she had been taken again. And my first thought was, he's gonna kill her.
And she said he has her, and I knew then she wouldn't be coming home. I knew it was gonna be all over.
That morning, there was probably 6 police cars in the driveway, and they came in and they wanted us to leave because they were afraid he was coming after us.
Did they tell you why they were coming to the house?
They just said that they were here because they knew that he had threatened to kill us. He said, "Rich, I think you better leave." And we're not leaving. This is my house.
We had worked the case all day and hadn't had any luck in locating them.
That afternoon, a local farmer spots something unusual in a remote field.
He noticed in a barn located in the field that there was a pair of blue jeans hanging out the window.
It could be nothing, but police decide to check it out. The moment they arrive on scene, they're greeted by screams and gunshots.
They heard the initial shot. They heard a female voice say, "Why'd you have to shoot me?" And they heard the second shot. They heard a man's voice yell, "Get out of here." And then they heard the third shot.
Tierne is held in the loft of the old barn. Police make their way inside, confirming the family's worst fears.
We realized that the first shot that they heard, he had shot her in the forehead. And a .22 caliber, it's not a very powerful gun, and that bullet actually didn't penetrate her skull. It just kind of traveled between her skull and her skin to the back of her head. However, after she exclaimed, "Why'd you have to shoot me?" he shot her again in the temple. That shot did penetrate her skull and caused her death.
Kevin saved the last shot for his own temple. But incredibly, cops find him still alive.
They performed some life-saving measures on him. They were able to get him into a helicopter and transferred to a Pittsburgh hospital where he remained alive for a couple of days.
Kevin finally succumbs to his cowardly self-inflicted wound.
I've chased him so many times. I said I knew every inch of that property or that area out there except that barn. I did not know that barn was back there. Because if I did, I would have been there.
With my brother's murder, I became very close with the prosecutors in my case, and I knew how much they took home with them. I mean, I could see it on your face. Like I can't even imagine when you're so close to keeping somebody safe and trying so hard to fight for them. What goes through your mind?
It's the hardest thing that's ever happened to me since I took this job. Can we take a break?
I can't help but think that the system and the judge.
The judge killed my daughter. The judge killed my daughter.
Crime Watch Daily reached out to Judge Gary Gilman for his response to Tierne's parents' allegations and got a brief no comment. But State Senator Camera Bartolotta was so moved by Tierne's story that she introduced domestic violence legislation in the victim's name.
With this bill, it would actually give our judges more tools to use in determining whether or not to even set bail, and to be able to use their discretion and deny bail if they believe that the risk assessment is high enough that there might even be a potential of a dangerous situation for a victim.
Kim Goldman broke the news of this promising legislation to Tierne's devastated parents.
It will be called Tierne's Law. Oh, thank you. Thank Thank you, Lord. At least we helped her in some way.
It's a glimmer of hope that other victims of domestic abuse might experience a different fate.
I've been wanting to give you a hug this whole time.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.